Hello, thank you very much for joining us.
Mic check, testing, 1, 2, 3.
Testing. Sounds good.
Hello everyone, welcome to our panel, the DS versus the PSP, retrospective and discussion. So the PSP stands as the only console to challenge Nintendo's dominance in the handheld space. Sony initially took the lead where it's promised home console-like experiences on the go, but Nintendo would make a massive comeback by tapping into a brand new audience. What games define the DS and PSP? Should you pick up either system in the year of our Lord 2023? Find out as we delve into the handhelds that defined a generation.
Here we go.
So, this is my co-host Ben. My name is Robert, and before we proceed, I want everyone to wish Ben a happy birthday for tomorrow. Tomorrow he's turning 29.
Yeah, we're almost over the hill.
Yeah.
I might just tell you a bit about myself as well. So I'm Ben. I'm the editor-in-chief and founder of a website called qualwork.com, where we do game, film, and tech reviews. We've worked with publishers, companies like Nintendo, Sony, and indie publishers as well, like Humble Games. And you can find us at qualwork.com and Qualwork on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and what used to be Twitter.
Now, my name is Robert. I host a YouTube channel called Windy Corner TV. I've been making video content since 2009, so if you want to see any of my content, just type in Windy Corner TV into YouTube.
It's really good. I can vouch for it.
Yeah. Okay, so let's begin this panel by whisking our minds back to the turn of the century. Now, during the turn of the century, Nintendo dominated the handheld space. They were untouchable. SNK, Sega, Atari, Bandai, and even Nokia tried to wrestle in on their territory.
Like, pretty much no one had a chance against the Game Boy, let's be completely honest. So it was pretty tough competition.
Yeah, so Nintendo's dominance is probably due to the huge success of Pokemon. I mean, it's in some niche franchise that nobody's ever heard of. But
you might have played it.
Yeah, but Pokemon, in all seriousness, is a huge cultural phenomenon, especially in the turn of the century. Like, Pokemon was everywhere. So it's unsurprising that Nintendo was untouchable. Now, meanwhile, in the home console space, Sony was dominating the market. The PS1 destroyed the Sega Saturn and the Nintendo 64. The PS2 obliterated the Dreamcast, the Xbox, and the GameCube.
So that makes me sad, as a Nintendo fan.
Yeah, they're all good consoles, even the Dreamcast. But, of course, with all this industry clout and cultural relevancy, Sony probably thought to himself, hey, we could poke a hole, we could find our place in the handheld space, and that brings us to the PSP. So, Ken Kugaragi summed up the PSP very well by calling it the Walkman of the 21st century.
And when you think about it, that's kind of what it was. Like, it was more than just a game console at the time. The PSP was a multimedia device, almost like a smartphone before we even had a smartphone.
Yeah, long before the iPhone was a twinkle in Steve Jobs' eye. But yeah, the PSP was incredible at the time. It had, obviously had incredible games. It could also play music. It had a web browser, and the movie quality was fantastic with the UMD video. It was almost DVD quality. It was far better than those MP4s you got off LimeWire, and you didn't have to worry about infecting your family's computer with a virus.
And when you think about it, being able to watch like a full quality movie in your hands on the go was something we really hadn't experienced at the time. So it was pretty mind-blowing.
Yeah, so initially the PSP was a massive hit. In UK, it set the record for the fastest selling console upon its release. And I think the reason why the PSP initially took the crown was when you compared it to the DS, the graphics didn't seem that great. Like, a really good example of the gulf between the two systems was Ridge Racer. There was a Ridge Racer game on the DS and the PSP early on in the life of both systems. Now, Ridge Racer DS was actually a port of Ridge Racer 64. It was actually developed by Nintendo in more specifically their American department. And its graphics were more akin to a 5th generation console like the N64. Meanwhile, Ridge Racer on the PSP was more akin to a 6th generation game. It had accurate reflections, it had specular highlights, it was just far more visually impressive, and it ran at double the frame rate compared to Ridge Racer on the DS.
Yeah, from a technical standpoint, the PSP vastly surpassed the DS. And I think that's really where Sony kind of was super impressive with that particular handheld. But that wasn't always the case.
No,
things changed significantly.
Yeah, the tide would eventually turn with Nintendo's...
The revenge of the DS.
Yes, Nintendo's Blue Ocean strategy, which was coined by the late Satoru Iwata. So essentially, instead of competing in crowded waters, a red ocean, Iwata proposed that they find a new audience, and that's what the DS set sail to find, a brand new audience.
One of the most interesting aspects of the DS that really led to its success was touch generations. So this was a series of video games. Primarily they were developed by Nintendo, and they were marketed towards a wide range of ages, whereas the PSP really focused on gamers in general. The Nintendo DS really opened that up. Anyone could play video games, and a lot of the games available on the DS were more than just for entertainment. One of the biggest sellers on the console is brain training, and brain training purely is an educational experience made fun.
Yeah, and it was predominantly marketed towards the elderly, because brain training is a really great way of fighting dementia. And any game that can claim that is poggers for me.
And the DS really did come into its own kind of later on in its lifespan. For the first couple of years, there wasn't this focus on anyone can play video games. But I think when they finally realised that games can span across generations, I mean, these sold millions, and unfortunately the PSP couldn't quite match that.
But it still did very well. It got 80 million units overall, which is the same as the PS3 and the 360. But I think another reason why the PSP started to flounder was because of the rise of smartphones. Now, I do think smartphones took a bigger chunk out of Sony's dominance, because Sony was positioning their device primarily as a multimedia device, but smartphones were offering that, but as well as the ability to use as a phone and far better battery life. And I also do think the failure of the PS3 initially also hurt the PSP's reputation, because around 2006, 2007, Sony's reputation was kind of in the toilet because of the PS3.
But the consoles did have some ways of combating that. In a way, they actually tried to be a little bit more like smartphones. In the DSi and DSi XL, you could actually access an online shop to download DSiware, which were sort of smaller, cheaper gaming experiences, more akin to apps that you might get on a smartphone.
And Sony did something similar with the PSP. They brought out the PSP Go, which was more akin to an iPhone. You know, it's very compact and an emphasis on digital distribution. And they also rolled out the PSP Minis, which were bite-sized little games that were about a couple of bucks pop.